Welcome to Mental Health News Radio, your source for information about mental health providers and the work they do in the world, the organizations that support their work, volunteers, and mental health consumers. This show is brought to you by EverythingEHR.com, devoted to helping mental health organizations find the best electronic health records software and revenue cycle management solutions. Thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone, this is Kristina Sunanta Walker, host of Mental Health News Radio and CEO of Everything EHR. Lori Jean Glass joins us today. She is one of the speakers at this year's National Conference on Addiction Disorders held in August in Denver, Colorado. Lori Jean is an educator, mentor, relationship coach, and public speaker offering solutions for people having relationship challenges. She has facilitated training for treatment centers to help clinicians see a different perspective when diagnosing and treating process addictions, love addiction, love avoidance, sex addiction, and codependency. Lori Jean became the executive director of clinical operations for Five Sisters Ranch, a relational treatment facility, before it opened in August of 2011. As our listeners know, we get intimate with our guests, and Lori Jean was incredible going there with me. No holds barred. We hope you'll enjoy the show as much as I did spending an hour with her. Thanks for listening. Lori, thank you so much for joining us on Mental Health News Radio.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Now, I heard about you through the National Conference on Addiction Disorders, which you are one of the keynote speakers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I can see from looking at your website and then reading even more and more and more about what you do, which we'll get into, why they would have you as one of their keynotes. Have you spoken for them before?
I have not. No, I have spoken at quite a few conferences, and this will be my first.
Okay. For them. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
What's your, we won't give anything away, but what is your talk going to be? What will the focus be?
The focus of this talk is really to help people understand how people end up in these crazy relationships. So this particular talk will cover from attachment to addiction to recovery.
Yeah.
And I call that I kind of call that the crazy train.
Yeah.
So it's going to be kind of a. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I read that on your website, the crazy train. I love that. I've always said I got on the bus to crazy town, so it was funny to read that and go, she's talking about the same things that I have said.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really about helping people understand, because I think that so many of them wear so many different labels today because they're given out so freely. Mm-hmm. that place, which is, Brene Brown's work around shame, is so prevalent and reaches and is identified by so many people because of that very reason. When you end up in these complex relationships, not even having the consciousness that you're there or why you're there.
Right.
It just is so destabilizing. So the work that I do and kind of the mission I've been on is to really kind of help demystify all of that and give it language that's understandable and relatable and accessible and can help facilitate change for the people that find themselves there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Why is this particular work so important to you? Is it something that affected you personally?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I come from a huge background of, attachment wounds, and my father drowned when I was a little girl, and my mom, the way that she showed up was to start drinking. She actually had a physician that recommended she start drinking wine, and back in the 60s, they didn't really do a thorough assessment about alcoholism, so she just started drinking and ended up, basically in a suicidal state and dying when I was a teenager. So, I've developed this stage 5 Klingon energy to every relationship I would find myself in. And not understanding, right? Not really fully understanding why. Even though it was obvious, it wasn't, I couldn't connect all the dots. And this is somebody who took a lot of psychology classes and sought therapy, and, it just wasn't making sense to me.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting that we're talking about this now. We have a show that we do every Tuesday night called Empowered Empaths, and we get into and I do this with several people, most of whom are clinicians like yourself. And we just did a show about about this particular subject. So I always look at it like if it's a recurring theme that's coming up for me, then it's something I need to continue to learn.
That's right. And just for the record, I'm not a clinician. My field of study is energy. Okay. And after I completed 6 years with extensive studying of how to work with energy in people, I went and got, 1 million coaching credentials. So I'm all about coaching people into health.
Gotcha.
Although I do have a very extensive background and knowledge on the clinical application as being in the position I am at Five Sisters. So.
Okay, gotcha. Well, we have a lot of counselors that come on and a lot of coaches as well. So, and a lot of great friends that, took different career paths, but they're out there helping heal wounded people, just like you.
Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's talk about Five Sisters Ranch. Tell our listeners what that is.
Five Sisters is actually the birthing came from a woman named Nancy Brown, who is a dear friend of mine, and she really wanted to, do something in the universe to help women. And she was very open about her story, and she actually went through her own challenges relationally, including love addiction, and sought help from me. And that's how we got to know each other. And as she moved on to the other side and was free from that wound, she really wanted to give back. So she actually invested a lot of her own personal money to create this amazing healing environment, small environment. First LEED Platinum certified facility, just really did it right. And we opened about 5 years ago to help women that, have relationship challenges. We work with women, not just addiction, but women from all over the country. And a month ago, we did our first men's group, Five Brothers.
Good for you.
Yeah. So that was super exciting. And it's a 12-day intensive, and first week is deconstruction, second week is repair and restore. And it's really helping people understand why they are the way they are in relationship and what they want and need out of them, and transferring it from the old narrative into the new narrative. And it's individualized because we're so small.
Right. That's got to be extremely intense. How
it is.
How are you part of the Five Brothers as well then, or are you staying focused on the sister side?
No, because the curriculum I developed, so I was very much involved in the Five Brothers and worked with them. Yeah, it was very. I've been working with men and women together in my own practice for a while, and knew that this type of treatment would be effective with men, and had been, wanting to open it up for men, and just seemed like the time was right. So I proposed it to Nancy, and she was on board completely, and so we just decided to step into it.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I have so many male listeners that I'm shocked actually at how many men are tuning in and listening, and how many men are coming forward and saying, hey, I might be an empath, and really defining a new masculinity. And it's just kind of overwhelmed my team and I with the number of male listeners that has just skyrocketed just to our show.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you for that. And what I found is when I was going out and speaking at all these conferences, I did a talk on sex addiction and talked about what if we treated it as an anxious attachment wound specifically. Because I think that there's a lot of men out there that really fit more the love addiction model. They're trading sex for love.
Right.
There's a distinct difference between the two, but they can sometimes appear the same if the person that is working with them is not aware of that. That's why I love all the work from the, CSATs and the people that are doing the right type of assessment. It's just so many of them are getting lost in translation and not getting to the right help. They're being, diagnosed with sex addiction from somebody who doesn't diagnose sex addiction just because it looks like it, when they're really an avoidant that is trading sex for love. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. A friend, a close friend, has talked extensively about that with me. So, yeah, I absolutely understand your take on it, and I'm right there with you. I did an interview with Robert Weiss, who's another one of the keynotes, and we got way heavy into that on the show. It was fascinating. How do you deal with when you're dealing with a couple or you're dealing with any kind of a relationship where it's become extremely unhealthy and there's no way to really, there's so many of those wounds that are in the way of their relationship continuing on? What do you do in those situations?
Well, I typically invite them to do an intensive with me for 2 days straight. And what we do is we go down and we help them watch each other go back and create what I call their survival pattern. I don't think people purposely quote, act out, unquote. That's a term I don't use. I don't appreciate. It feels very shaming.
Yes.
But we look at their survival patterns and their experiences that they're having so that they can get an understanding of who they're in relationship with, because oftentimes you'll have somebody in their adolescent energy in relationship with somebody's inner child.
Yeah, boy.
Every time they have conflict. So we go right to, these are the 5 areas of attachment we're going to work on, and before we work on it, we're going to look at the different various ways that you've adapted survival patterns in order to feel comfortable attaching. Because basically what's not working is they just haven't found their own system. They haven't co-created their own language and their own system. And it is so celebratory when we're done with the 2 days because, and it's intense. I mean, I'm Sagittarius and German, so we get, we get in there,
Right.
We don't stop till we get to the other side, but the couples will tell you, they leave there, just feeling very different. It's cool. And it's not about me, right? I hope this isn't coming across as like, oh, I'm the end all be all. That's not what I'm saying.
No.
I believe in, rigor and relevance and an educational platform that is also has in with it, a model that they can take with them to practice with and use. I think we have to have a lot more, treatment to go with all of our assessing.
Interesting.
Like, what are you actually going to do? What are you actually going to do?
Right.
So, it's great because the first day is all about understanding one another on a different level in the context that has, a system really built into helping them see that. And, it's so beautiful when you watch these couples just have this compassion and it makes sense to them. When they're in it, they can't get down and understand it. I always tell the story. I have different stories that I tell, but the one that I think really lands it is this one. I'll be brief. Are you okay with it?
Of course. Absolutely.
Okay.
Our listeners love stories. I'm forever telling them about things in my life. People know way more about me than they ever wanted to. So please go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm a storyteller too. So my now ex-husband, who I just, really love dearly and could not show up in relationship. It's been a long time. We've been divorced for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. But what happened is when I first met him, I told him the story of how my mother would show up on my birthdays. She was an alcoholic, and anybody that grew up in an alcoholic home knows that most of us have 4 eyeballs, 2 in the front and 2 in the back, because we get this hypervigilance energy that we just acquire, right? So I'm explaining to him, about my childhood, and it was really the first man that I felt really safe enough to really talk about all of my wounds because I had a lot of shame around them. And so I was sharing with him how my mother would always show up on my birthday, and that was the day, and she would show up, that and Christmas. She magically would just come forth. And one of the traditions we have is on our birthdays, we got to pick the dinner we wanted to have and the cake. And we all seem to pick the same cake every year. Mine was an angel food cake with white icing and red gumdrops and candy canes around it. So when I meet this man, I'm, being vulnerable, and I'm sharing with him about how my mom would show up and how important it was, and just this cake, that she would make for me. And as a little girl, seeing that beautiful cake that looked like Christmas and I'm December baby was, just so meaningful to me.
Right.
So, 2 months later, my birthday rolls around, and he calls me, and we're dating at the time. He's not my husband yet. And he's, asked me, to dinner. We're going to go out for my birthday. So I'm excited. I go home from work, and I, change and get all dressed up because, that's what was important back then. And he knocks on the door, and I open the door, and he's standing there with a cake box, and my heart just about drops. Like, here, this man that I'm already drawn to, I'm already creating intensity around. I'm in desperate need for positive regard, right? Mm-hmm. All of my hypervigilance is circulating because, he's going to be the one that's going to help me because I haven't gotten help yet, right?
Right.
And he's standing there with a cake box, and I open up the cake box, and it's a damn carrot cake. And I'm not kidding you. My infrastructure exploded. It was like an emotional bomb went off inside of me. And I looked at him, and what I did was I proceeded to create protest behavior. I proceeded to wreck the entire night. It was all about how he wasn't reaching me, It was, when I look back on it, we laugh about it now, but the expectations that I had that were so incredibly unrealistic of this man.
Yeah.
And I see it in couples all the time, how, their expectations of their attaching to their primary relationship is going to be the end all and be all of healing their heart and wound, and they mistake it. They mistake intensity for intimacy.
Oh my
all
God.
the time.
Thank you. Yes. Intensity for intimacy. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have a very similar relationship with my ex-husband. We've known each other for 29 years. I've known him longer than I haven't known him. And, he is my best friend. We will never be love partners ever, because it just doesn't work for us, but we are so close. And we both feel, we just talked about this last night as, he was driving me somewhere, and, I said, you're my best friend. You know that? And he said, yeah, of course I know that. And I said, I had a friend of mine, a counselor, say to me, do you ever think you guys will get back together? Because you just have this great love. And I looked at him and I said, what do you think about that? And he just smiled and he goes, yeah, but we have something mature, some kind of mature love beyond that. You're going to go partner with somebody else one day. I'm not going to. I'm not interested, but you will, Kristen. And it'll hurt, but I'll be okay with that. And I'll probably end up giving the guy emotional support.
Yeah.
But, it is a very mature love and respect and friendship. And I did the same thing. I mean, I was 18 when I married him. The stuff that I expected him the needs that I expected him to take care of were just unreal.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have corrective experiences, when we have those wounds that get activated from situations that happened in the past,
Oh, yeah.
So important.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Being accountable for your own wounds and what you're bringing to the table. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes, too, with relationships, possibly, sometimes there needs to be a break. I know that he and I needed a 2-year break away from each other to go to our corners. And then we, came back together to raise our son together. But that 2-year break was, he needed growth, I needed growth, and we were not able to do that together at that time. So I think sometimes breaks can be a good thing, too.
They can. And sometimes, if you get the right kind of help and get the system set up, it can include the distance apart, right?
Right.
Especially if you have children or, if you have other people, businesses, children, I'm not a big advocate of people just taking these long breaks. I mean, if they're purpose-driven and specific and the two people have come together and made that decision and really understand the context of it, then I think it's great. But for people and it sounds like, perhaps I don't know your history or you personally, sounds like, you and your husband, that's what needed to happen because of where you were at in your past. But I think anytime we can help people know that, there's a different way of doing it, it's great. You know, we get a lot of my coaching company, which is called Pivot. I have a relationship coaches that go out and help people, you know, with that kind of specific thing, because it comes up all the time.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
There's relational trauma, and people want to separate, and then, you know, there's a lot of things that get affected. You know, your finances, your family, your
children,
health, children, all of that. You know, so.
Well, had we known you, we would have gotten that. We didn't have this. You know, we know what we know now.
Exactly. And
we didn't know that.
Exactly. You know, I would have appreciated the damn carrot cake. and had a piece. You know, I would have had a piece.
Yeah, it's so sweet that you got a cake. You know, I mean, yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah, after he'd been at work all day, you know, it's like, hello, you know, it's, oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
So how do you deal with it? Something that our listeners keep emailing us about is triangulation, and how that can be used, you know, really cause a lot of damage and wreak havoc in a relationship. Can you speak to that, or is that a term that you use?
It is a term I use, and it's pretty simple for me. One is that people usually need to, understand what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are doing it until somebody points it out, what's happening. And then the second thing is give them a relational point of reference. So we do something in Pivot called the Circle Boundaries. It's also something that we do as a piece of the curriculum at Five Sisters Ranch. And it's a way to understand how different people are in relationship to you. And it really helps with triangulation, you know, because oftentimes people will triangulate about other people because they don't know how to be in a relationship with that person, mm-hmm. or have the language to communicate what's necessary to be communicated.
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely.
So it's really about education, and then the process of understanding the relationship, having a context for it, right? A context for it. And then being able, after you have that context, go into, you know, even role playing. You know, like when I'm working with somebody and they have a situation in a relationship where they have a really hard time having a conversation, then we role play the conversation, because sometimes it's the languaging. People get, and sometimes the most intellectual people will get really tripped up. You know, their IQ is high, their EQ is low, and they get frozen in the middle. You know, because they have the knowledge and they don't have the skill set internally to be able to show up emotionally. And then they get to this ambivalent state where they just get completely frozen. And we work with a lot of people like that are really frozen relationally.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that intensity versus intimacy. Can you take a deeper dive into that?
Yeah, so absolutely. And I'm trying to think of a good example that people can get quickly. You know, and again, back to stories.
Great.
You know,
Love them.
Yeah. So before I got help for my attachment wounds, i.e. love addiction, I was in a relationship with a guy that, you know, we'd gone out on New Year's Eve, and I was not feeling good that night. I wasn't feeling good physically. I just wasn't feeling well. And we had gone to dinner with another couple, and I felt like I wasn't good enough. I'll just be straight. And this is, you know, a while ago, but it's what happened. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't feeling pretty enough. We were in a restaurant with a lot of, you know, people all decked out for New Year's Eve. And I'm a beautiful woman. I have fairly, you know, my self-esteem is good today. But back then it was, you know, when you have a mom that chooses death over you, you don't feel good about yourself, right?
Right.
So I'm sitting there in this beautiful restaurant feeling insecure and not enough. And so instead of being able to say to this person that I'm dating, you know, I'm having a hard night. Like intimacy is, you know, into me, you see, you know, I'm having a really hard night and I'm uncomfortable. And I just want to let you know that I'm kind of off. You know, I'm not feeling, I don't like my outfit or whatever, right? And instead of being able to show up and say those things, we get to the restaurant and I'm like, why are you looking at her? You know, I just start creating what I call protest behavior, and then it ramps up. And he's looking at me. He's like, you know, Lori Jean, what is your problem? you know, and I was insecure with him anyway because he had some behaviors going on that I didn't appreciate and didn't like, but couldn't leave him because of the love addiction, right? He was an avid porn watcher, and I was very uncomfortable with that. So very uncomfortable with him. But I couldn't leave him because the abandonment was the pain body wound was too activated. So,
right.
So I'm sitting there creating intensity, right? Because I'm ramping it up. And then it ends up escalating, and then he gets angry. He leaves the restaurant. He goes home. I drive to his house. I'm knocking on his door. He doesn't let me in. I curl up like a ball on his doorstep. I mean, that's intensity versus intimacy.
Right.
And so I'm painting kind of a picture of what it looks like. And that's also what I call crazy train. So I get a lot of people like that don't understand. In this case, how could I end up curled up on his doorstep in my $350 dress?
Right.
How does that happen?
Right.
You know, that happens because I cannot get a handle of my emotions. I cannot get in there and settle down.
Right.
It's so intense inside of me. The fire is lit. It is so hot that I am super uncomfortable. So I hear that all the time with people that have attachment wounds, people that have, you know, unresolved trauma, i.e. from, you know, abuse, emotional neglect, rape, you know, all of that stuff.
Right.
You know, and so the next day was the day I went to treatment.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just knew something was wrong. That's not normal. You don't sleep on doorsteps.
Oh, believe me. Yeah.
Of people's houses. And I got over being, you know, I'm comfortable sharing stories because I know they're helpful, you know.
We're very similar in that way. Like I said, I'm glad I lived such a rich, full life because I got lots of stories to share, and they're always, you know, some of them are very inspiring and others are, this is the spectacularly embarrassing thing that I did. And that's what the listeners resonate with is, oh my God, I've done that too. I can't believe she's actually admitting that on the air, but
yeah,
I totally relate. So we hear from people all over the world saying, you know, in different
countries,
I think they did the same. I did the same thing. I get it.
Yeah, well, I think it's important because, you know, those people really feel like they're crazy. And, you know, I've met women in psych wards that are there. You know, I've never been to one, but I know a lot of people, their behavior gets so out of whack that they can't control it because of these deep-seated relational wounds that they don't understand, you know, and they just adapt this behavior that it is crazy. I mean, that's why I call it crazy train. We have to call it what it is because the outside world looking at it is going to perceive it that way. It's very destabilizing.
It is, and it's really hard to live your life when you don't deal with those wounds. I've found when I work with I've been in therapy since I was 12. I had all kinds of childhood abuse issues and things like that. So I definitely have been in therapy for a long time, and I work with a wonderful healer, counselor now that's the best I've ever experienced because she's the best and also because I'm at such a receptive place in my awareness. So those two things combined are wonderful. But what's interesting is when you are not dealing with your wounds and you're going about your everyday life, I always felt like I was just keeping the lid on the teapot as best as I could. Like at any moment I was going to slip and people would see my crazy. And that's a really hard way to live. It's that controlled because you haven't dealt with a lot of your stuff. It's boiling under the surface, and at any moment, somebody might see that. And it was wonderful to start working with this woman and finally get to that and go, okay, you got some more work to do. And I don't feel like that as much anymore, that I'm, you know, hiding because it's all been displayed, you know, on my show.
Right. And, you know, we're in positions where we can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like we're in positions where we can do that. And what I help my clients see is learn, you know, the other thing that's really harmful, it's not just a triangulation, it's an over-disclosure.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, and here I am. I don't look at these two stories I've told you as over-disclosure because I'm choosing I'm open to, because I help a lot of people understand what is going on for them. So I'm in a place professionally where I can handle it personally. But I see all the time people that go into these storylines and will get a new job or will get into a new relationship, and that over-disclosure piece actually kills it, because they don't really have that differentiating point relationally, which is something that is so awesome about doing our relational boundary work, our circle boundaries with people, helping them understand their survival patterns, and then where do you go from there? How do you show up in relationship?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you get in a new relationship and then someone brings their semi of information and then unload it on you as a highly empathic person who's always the one that everyone comes to about everything. And I do work in psych wards as a volunteer with a therapy dog, and I've heard everything. I've been through just about a lot. So when someone does that, I want to listen and be there for them. But the weight of that can absolutely drain you dry. So that's an interesting point that you just made with, the over disclosure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important. I do, we have in Pivot, we have a dating module. And it's really cool. We get a lot of people that come to us that are struggling with finding a partner. And they've done the online thing, they've done dating profiles, they've done all this stuff around dating, and it's really neat to help them learn how to date differently. And one of the things that we teach them, it's to be able to be proactive and show up offensively instead of defensively. And know really what they want, what are their non-negotiables. It's a whole system that they go through. So by the end, they have a very clear, elevator pitch for themselves, which is the entry point, and then they know exactly what they're looking for. So they have their own playbook as opposed to being and showing up and trying to be something for somebody else, which is what 75% of people that are venturing in the dating world are doing unconsciously, and they're not even aware of it.
Right.
So it's really interesting when we look at this relational model that we've all adapted to because of who we are and what we've experienced in the universe. I just find it fascinating.
I do too. I find it fascinating too. I, for one, don't do the whole dating thing. To me, it's like forced intimacy with someone that I just don't even know. But I like we're friends for a long time, and then you turn around and go, hey, there's something more here. That's more my speed. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dating. That's just my speed.
Well, that's what's to be honored, right? And then
exactly.
And that's great, and sometimes people that have a slow speed aren't necessarily like you. They're actually quite avoidant.
Right.
And the avoidance is keeping them out of relationships.
Right.
So if they have old wounds that's causing fear for them to step into and serving it up as, well, it's just not how I am, then it's kind of like, okay, then, why are you here?
Right.
Right?
I examined that for sure within myself. Am I avoidant? And I came to the conclusion, working with a therapist, no, that's not my thing.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't sound like it for you. It's just there's a lot of it out there.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. If I was avoidant, I wouldn't have the long line of great male friendships that I do have.
Yeah, and I don't think you'd be able to have this radio show.
No, yeah, exactly. Talk about
and
not
share
avoiding.
Your wonderful stories. Yeah, it's interesting. So talk to me about that, because you tell stories, and I love that. I love that you do that, because there's something that lets people's guard come down and allows them to be vulnerable themselves when they hear someone sharing, their vulnerability, their stories, and doing it in a very confident way that you do. You're doing it in a mode to facilitate healing, which is very different than unloading. So how do you, have you ever had moments where you've thought about something you shared and been like,
ooh, maybe that was, and then got okay with it later because that was just your stuff. It really was okay. But how do you deal with those kinds of dynamics within yourself?
I had a shift, a pretty profound shift about 3 years ago. And at the risk of hoping this doesn't sound, arrogant or anything like that, honestly, Kristen, I know that I'm purpose driven right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have those. When I very first started speaking, I remember feeling it, what you're talking about, that feeling of, questioning, right?
Right.
Ambivalence of, did I reveal too much? I recall that. I haven't had that in a while, just because I'm really kind of on this path, and I'm comfortable. I'm really comfortable, and I don't go out and make it all about me. I'm just am open to sharing stories, once in a while. But I'm very purpose driven. That's why I'm helping a lot of people, and I'm working with people that help people, and I don't have that energy come up anymore.
Good.
I don't reveal for me where it comes up, just to be honest with you, is occasionally I'll feel a little less than because I don't have all the credentials after my name.
Mm.
However, I had a experience when I went, there's a college locally Dominican, and I was registered and signed up about 6 years ago to go to finish and become an MFT. And, for me, and again, I hold therapy in high regard. It's helped me out tremendously. But for me, the model didn't work because I didn't want the regulations around it.
Mm.
I didn't want to be able to not have that flow. And I had done so much work with energy that I knew that having to stop and be so mindful and careful wouldn't work for me.
Right.
Now, having said that, I'm extremely mindful and careful. I don't go into lanes where I know I can't. I don't play psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make recommendations for medications.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do any of that. I'm very ethical when it comes to all of that. It's just, for me, I really like getting there and coaching people, because sometimes you have to go over on their side of the table and help pull them through. That's what coaching is all about.
Right. And you can't do that you're right. There's too many restrictions. It's why I had a friend say to me, you need to, really get back into some kind of, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I said, no, I don't. I've done all that. And it was wonderful. And it got me to this place that I am today. But the healer that I work with now, that is part counseling and part energy work, that is the best work that I've ever experienced. She is all I need right now.
Well, yeah, well, it's all congruent, and I have this thing that we teach called healthy alignment, and it's about thinking, feeling, and doing congruently. And when you are able to maintain a healthy alignment, it's really when you're able to think and feel and do. Oftentimes we spend too much time thinking.
Yes.
And then our feeling. So what I know with energy is that anybody that's anxious, has anxiety disorder, love addiction, codependency, all of that stuff that creates a tremendous amount of energy, people like that move into relationship by feeling and then doing something about it right away, and then think about what they just did later.
Right.
People that are avoidant, people that are cautious, people that are need a lot of answers, people that want it to be just so, every A has to have B next to it, right?
Right.
Those people think, and then they do something about it, and then they may feel later. And then ambivalent people will think about something intensely, and then they'll feel it, and then they'll think about it some more, and then they'll feel it, and then they'll think about some more, and they'll feel it, and then they don't do.
Right. Right.
They get frozen. They get frozen relationally. So, that's what I'm all about. If that gives you deep insight into, that's like the core of where I go with people, to help them understand energetically, how do you move in and out of relationships?
Right.
Because when people can get an understanding of that and find a way to have a healthier alignment so they can think, feel, and do congruently, then they feel freer in the world because they actually are showing up for everything. And they're really their best advocate.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's, I feel like that. I feel like even the really dumb, embarrassing, whatever things I do, I really show up for myself. And I now, because of the self-esteem that I have now, I can look in the mirror and go, well, that was really embarrassing, Kristen. But I can laugh and go, girlfriend.
Exactly.
That was pretty, and rein myself in as needed when I know I'm dipping into some unhealthy behavior, because it was something I try to say to our listeners all the time is, you don't come to this Buddha on a mountaintop. Well, most of us don't come to this awareness and then we never have unhealthy behavior again. That it's a constant.
Absolutely.
it's a constant.
I always, my dear friend Rosemary used to say to me all the time, it's not a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a straight line. And I love that humility. I bump into stuff like that all the time. And when we do the survival patterns, we teach people to look at their child, their teen, their unhealthy adult, and then their healthy adult. And I think when we get activated in those various parts of our being, of behaviors that we learn and use, and it's in our toolbox, right?
Right.
My teenager, if I get kind of pissy, or I get a little, when I go to my high school reunion, okay? My teenager trigger,
yeah.
Yeah, and then I go, okay, put yourself in check, LJ, and then my healthy adult kicks in, and that's what you're talking about. It's like, you have those moments where you just kick in, and I love that, because you're absolutely right. None of us get that highest level of consciousness and stay there all the time. We're perfectly imperfect. We're human beings. I mean, I love David Hawkins' map of consciousness, and I watch people go up and down the cycles relationally all the time, and it's just what we do. It's just what we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. This last week, I've had a pretty big upheaval in a personal relationship that it will. I really love this person. I hope that it will work out. It's not a love partner and it's a friendship, but I hope that it will work itself out. And one of the, I'm always looking at, okay, so what do I need to work on within me that, I was a participator in this. So, go to my counselor, and she said, I want you to look back at, all of the different ages from 18, to, as far back as you can remember. And, what do you feel about that child when you picture those different ages? And she said, I bet about 8 or 9, you're going to have some resistance. And sure enough, every age I was like, oh, I could hug her, teenager me. I could hug her. Oh yeah, she was a spectacular mess, but I could hug her. 2-year-old, I can hug her. Got to about 8 or 9. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go near that one. And she said, that's what we're going to work on today. Because that girl is carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she's very upset. So we're going to work on that today. And that's the stuff we need to do. So that's what I'm working on right now. And it's important to say that story, because if I say that story, somebody else can go, oh, maybe I need to, do that too, which is why I love the fact that you tell stories. It's just, I can only imagine the amount of healing that comes through the work that you do because of just this conversation and hearing who you are and the fact that you share yourself. It's amazing. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Thank you. No, that really means a lot to me. Thank you for saying that. And I do share, a lot of who I am with people, and I care deeply. I care deeply, because I've been there. And, when you're choosing between life and death, that's the gift my mother gave me.
Right.
And she gave me such a gift, because people do have a choice. You know, people have
Yes.
a choice, and there are more and more storylines that are coming across my path, and we haven't even talked about technology. I do a talk on falling in love through technology. We haven't even jumped into that conversation.
Man.
Maybe that could be another show.
Please. When we stop this recording, we are going to book that next show because that is huge. That is absolutely huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is I have a real passion for the younger generation and what they're up against, because, you know, when I was on Crazy Train, there was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. Of course, Facebook is not what the younger ones are on, but, you know, we didn't have all that. And it's wonderful to be able to use social media as a way to connect. It's changing the face of how we are relationally.
Yes.
Big time. And, you know, having the conversations with young parents and letting them see, you know, just what they're up against. You know, like if you train a brain to be relational with technology as the number one source of relationship,
right,
then that attachment is going to be compromised.
Right.
Compromised when they're older. Like I was saying to somebody, and I was laughing about a year ago, and now I don't really laugh. I really think it's maybe some truth to this statement. And what I was sharing was that, you know, in many family systems, the new parent is the technology.
Oh,
that's
true.
You know, kids are learning from the Google. They're learning from, you know, from looking at their phones. They're not getting instruction and modeling and values, and, you know, they're just being thrown to technology. You know, it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, it's interesting, and it's something that, you know, I'm very passionate about. It's not that, and I love, I've heard Rob Wise speak, and, you know, the first time I heard him speak was a couple of years ago, and he was talking about, you know, he said, you know, with technology, it's not going away. We just have to, you know, we have to accept it. And I love that he said that, because it hit me. And I've never, you know, met him. We've never had a conversation, you know, I hope to soon. And what was great about him saying that is that, okay, you're right. Yet we can have conversation around different ways to be in relationship with it.
Yes, exactly.
You know, we can learn.
Yeah, I don't want it to go away either. There's wonderful things about it. I had a young man who came on. His name is Matthew Joseph Diaz, and he was severely obese and lost all the weight and had all this excess skin. And he did a YouTube video about a very shaming incident that happened when he got naked in front of a young woman. And that YouTube video went viral and got like 170 million views. And now he's leading a body positivity movement. So I had him on a couple of times, and he said the way that I was able to get comfortable socially and really helped me was chatting on Facebook. I couldn't do it, you know, chatting on with technology. It really helped him. And it can be incredibly helpful, but just like anything, it can turn into an addiction if we're not careful. So I love what you're saying about changing the way that we have relationship to it.
Absolutely, and that's what I loved about Rob saying that, because, you know, I was listening to a couple of other people talk about sex addiction and technology, and, you know, it's almost like I get that you want to stay off it for a while when you're in withdrawal from sex addiction. I understand all that. That's, you know, to me that's obvious, right?
Right.
I just what I loved about what he was saying is that, you know, it's not going away. So we have to look at different ways to be in relationship with it. You know, I just wanted to be clear on my point.
Yes.
You know, I was completely understanding what he was saying, even though you could feel the audience resisting it, because I think anybody that's been wounded by being in a relationship with a porn addict or sex addict where technology is involved, you know, they want to make the technology wrong.
Right.
Well, it's about your relationship to it, and the culture that we're creating as a culture that is so dependent on it. And we're dependent on our caregivers when we're growing up. Now we're all very dependent on technology. I mean, I'm leaving for France for a vacation on the 11th, right? I was telling you.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh my God, if I didn't have my technology, what? Huh? Really? And the last time I went, I didn't have it. And so I'm looking
and
at
you
the
lived.
difference between, yeah, I did. It's so interesting. It's just really interesting.
Oh, I can leave my phone. I love it. But I can leave it. And there have been times where I'm like, this thing is an appendage. This has to stop. I have my moments, but I make myself, nope, you're leaving it, and just go off.
So may I ask how old you are?
46.
Okay. So you can leave your phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. But you know what? If you were 24,
oh yeah,
you probably wouldn't be able to.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I didn't grow up with it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If you told a 24-year-old that, they would say, I'm getting it implanted in my head.
That's right.
They want to just, like Star Trek, tap the side of their head and, start talking. But yeah, I get it. So I still, that's my whole consulting firm is about behavioral health technology. So I'm steeped in technology, a little bit harder for me than your average 46-year-old to leave it, but I make myself.
Aww. That's great.
Thank you so much, and especially for doing this before you're going to go away on what's going to be such a great vacation. Oh.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually going to be really going to the south of France, and I've been working on a book for a while now, about the crazy train, and I'm hoping to get it finished. So that will feel really good.
I see
that body of work.
I see a TED Talk.
Yeah.
In your future.
I've heard that before.
Sure you have.
Definitely.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
It'll be really wonderful to hear you, to hear you speak in person. And of course to give you a hug, but also to hear you speak.
Aw, yeah. I look so forward to meeting you too. Yeah. Was there any other questions you had? Or?
No, I think we're good. I think it's time to tell our listeners how they can find out more about you.
Okay. Well, I have, they can find Five Sisters just by Googling Five Sisters Ranch, and the 5 is spelled out, Five. And my personal website is simple. It's LoriJean.com. And then if there's anything that your listeners are really called to in terms of finding out more about the coaching, our coaching website is actually going to be launched in this next week, which is really exciting.
Ooh.
And that website is lovetopivot.com. Lovetopivot.com, because our company is called Pivot. So those are 3 areas. Probably the best one to reach me directly is, LoriJean.com. And then by all means, hopefully your listeners will check out Five Sisters Ranch, especially now that we're taking men, if anyone's interested in our 12-day intensive.
Yeah, I'll have links to all of that, just so the listeners know. I will have links posted up to both places on Blog Talk Radio. So, Lori, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. And I wanted to ask you, what's your dog's name?
Oh, I have 4, but the 2 therapy dogs are Miles and Buddy. The one that you see in the picture, that's Miles. You'll hear him bark when you listen to your show. At the end of the show, I recorded a bark, so just be prepared. I interviewed another a presenter, not one of the keynotes, but one of the presenters at NCAT. His name's Dr. Arthur Trotsky, and he's in the Dead Sea. I just interviewed him last week, and he emailed me and said, I loved it. Of course, I'm critiquing everything I said because I don't like my voice, which everybody says that, except you probably don't because you're used to hearing your own voice with speaking. I don't mind my voice anymore either, but he emailed me and said, the only thing was that it scared the hell out of me when I heard your dog bark at the end. You should have warned me. So I feel like I should give you fair warning that you will hear Miles bark at the end of your show.
Oh, that's so cute. Well, I was excited to see it because Nancy, who is the owner of Five Sisters, she has a border collie, and it looks like Miles is a border collie.
Yeah, they're all border collies.
At the ranch we have a border collie named Chet.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're special dogs. I love all dogs, but I can't have a dog that doesn't have the IQ of a border collie anymore. That's my personal dog. I just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's so cute. He comes in, he gives me a kiss right on my mouth every time he sees me.
Oh.
It's hysterical. Yeah. He's so sweet.
Yep. Never. I went walking yesterday with a friend and she said, well, I want to bring my dog Mocha. And I said, sure. And she kind of hesitated and said, it's a pit bull. I said, are you kidding? I love pit bulls. You don't have to hesitate with me. I think they're the yummiest dogs out there. So don't worry about that whole nonsense thing about pit bulls. It's not the pit bull. It's the people.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, let me go ahead and thank our listeners. And you're going to stay on, remember, after we'll chat for a second. But please, listeners, enjoy this show. I certainly enjoyed it. And thanks for tuning in to another edition of Mental Health News Radio.
Please join us next time on Blog Talk Radio. Visit mentalhealthnewsradio.com for a list of upcoming and past shows. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, please visit everythingehr.com or email me at hello@everythingehr.com.